The river ran red for 200 yards. Confederate soldiers hunted black troops begging for mercy. And the man who ordered it? He later founded the Ku Klux Klan. This is April 12, 1864, the day that became one of the darkest war crimes in American history. A day when 3,000 Confederate soldiers massacred over 300 Union troops after they had surrendered. A day when being black in a Union uniform meant you had no chance of survival, even with your hands in the air. And here's what they don't teach you in school. The Confederate general responsible for this slaughter initially bragged about it, then spent the rest of his life denying it ever happened. Sound familiar? This is the story of the Fort Pillow Massacre, and it's about to blow your mind. If you think you know the Civil War, you're wrong. Hit that follow button right now because Ikemefuna History TV is about to expose the atrocity that became a rallying cry for justice and the cover-up that lasted 160 years. This isn't just history. This is the blueprint for how America buries its crimes. Subscribe now because what happened next will change everything you thought you knew. April 12, 1864. Fort Pillow, Tennessee. A Union-held stronghold situated on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River, about 40 miles north of Memphis. According to Black Past historical records and the U.S. National Park Service, the garrison consisted of roughly 600 Union soldiers. Half were formerly enslaved people who had escaped to freedom and enlisted in the United States colored troops. The other half were white Southern Unionists, mostly from East Tennessee, men who had rejected the Confederacy and fought for the Union. They were defending what was once a Confederate fort, now a symbol of Union control in the South. Then Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest arrived with approximately 3,000 Confederate troops. According to Wikipedia's extensively documented Civil War records and Britannica historical analysis, Forrest was already known as a fierce, temperamental, and violent commander who gave surrender or die ultimatums to his enemies. By 1864, the Confederacy was desperate, facing severe manpower shortages and needing horses for cavalry operations. Forrest launched this raid to capture supplies, gain recruits, and acquire mounts. But Fort Pillow wasn't about military strategy. According to the Gilder-Lehrman Institute of American History, this attack fell on the 3rd anniversary of Fort Sumter, the opening shots of the Civil War. Many historians believe Forrest wanted to send a message to punish both the black soldiers who dared to wear Union blue and the white Southerners who had turned against the Confederacy. Here's where it gets sinister. According to the American Battlefield Trust, Forrest sent a message under a flag of truce around 3:30 p.m., demanding unconditional surrender. But according to Black Past documentation, his men violated that flag of truce, using the ceasefire to creep closer to the fort. The message read, "Your gallant defense has entitled you to treatment as brave men." But if they refused surrender, Forrest warned he would not be responsible for his men's actions. Major William Bradford, who had taken command after the fort's original commander was killed by a Confederate sniper, asked for 1 hour to consult with his officers. Forrest, growing impatient and seeing Union boats possibly bringing reinforcements, gave him 20 minutes. Bradford and his officers voted unanimously not to surrender. They believed Forrest was bluffing. They were catastrophically wrong. According to the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War's May 1864 congressional investigation, when Bradford delivered the refusal, Forrest calmly saluted, walked away, and gave the order to attack. Within 5 minutes, Confederate forces swarmed over the parapet. The overwhelmed Union garrison fled down the bluff toward the river, desperately seeking escape. That's when the massacre began. According to eyewitness testimony documented by the Gilder-Lehrman Institute, Forrest's men continued shooting well after Federal soldiers had thrown down their weapons. They killed men in hospital tents. They shot soldiers begging for mercy. They hunted down wounded men trying to crawl to safety. According to the National Park Service's analysis, Union soldiers who made it to the river were caught in a deadly crossfire and shot as they tried to swim to safety or surrender. Here are the numbers that expose the horror. According to the American Battlefield Trust, Forrest lost approximately 14 killed and 86 wounded. The Union lost about half their total strength, nearly 300 men killed. But here's the damning evidence. According to Britannica and verified by congressional testimony, black units lost 64% of their men killed outright, more than 30% higher than white units. Of approximately 300 U.S. colored troops stationed at Fort Pillow, according to National Park Service documentation, only 58 were captured alive. The rest were killed or listed as missing, most likely drowned trying to escape. By the next morning, only about 65 black soldiers had survived a massacre that continued intermittently through the night. According to the Zinn Education Project Historical Archives, most wounds on Union soldiers targeted the torso and head, execution-style kills, not battle wounds which typically occur on limbs. While 70% of white soldiers survived Fort Pillow, only 35% of black soldiers made it out alive. And Forrest? According to Black Past records, he initially described the river as dyed with the blood of the slaughtered for 200 yards. His field commander bragged that his men had taught the mongrel garrison a memorable lesson. But later, according to History.com documentation, Forrest and his staff either denied there was a massacre or blamed it on the garrison for refusing to surrender. The Confederacy had already passed a law in May 1863, according to Wikipedia's Civil War documentation, stating that black U.S. soldiers captured while fighting would be turned over to states and tried as slave insurrectionists. Essentially, an automatic death sentence. Few colored troops were ever captured. Instead, they were massacred at battles like Fort Pillow, the Crater, and Saltville. According to President Abraham Lincoln's cabinet meetings on May 3, 1864, documented by the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center, Lincoln asked how the United States should respond. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton wanted retaliation. Treasury Secretary Salmon Chase recommended enforcing the order of retaliation. But Lincoln waited for the congressional investigation to conclude. The Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War published their findings on May 5, 1864. Their widely distributed report confirmed the massacre and made "Remember Fort Pillow" a rallying cry throughout the North. According to the Zinn Education Project, black Union soldiers used this battle cry for the rest of the war, fighting with renewed determination and fury. But here's the tragic irony. According to military historian David J. Eicher's conclusion cited in Wikipedia, Fort Pillow was of almost no tactical significance. Forrest abandoned the fort the very next day. He gained nothing except a temporary disruption of Union operations. The massacre served no military purpose. It was pure racial violence. And Nathan Bedford Forrest? According to the Zinn Education Project and multiple historical sources, he became the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan after the war. The man who massacred black soldiers in 1864 spent the next decade terrorizing freed black people as a Klan leader. For over a century, according to Black Past documentation, Southern revisionists downplayed or denied the massacre. Many reference works refused to call it a massacre, but recent scholarship drawn from primary sources, including Andrew Ward's award-winning book River Run Red, The Fort Pillow Massacre in the American Civil War, concludes emphatically that a massacre did transpire, and that Forrest's field officers did little to stop it. Forrest himself bears the ultimate responsibility. General William Tecumseh Sherman wrote at the time, "No doubt Forrest's men acted like a set of barbarians, shooting down the helpless Negro garrison after the fort was in their possession." So here's my question for you. How many other massacres were buried by the lost cause mythology that romanticized the Confederacy? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me, did you know Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first KKK Grand Wizard, was the same man who massacred surrendering black troops at Fort Pillow? And here's the real question. Why are there still monuments honoring this man in America today? Share this with someone who needs to know the truth about Confederate heroes. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and follow Ikamafuna History TV because we're exposing the atrocities they tried to erase from history books. When we remember Fort Pillow, we honor those who died fighting for freedom, and we refuse to let their murders be forgotten.